poured across her scalp and down her skin, pooling around her feet, spreading across the rocks and the bleached driftwood, oozing its way into the salt-stunted weeds farther up the bank, and the shrubs with their traces of spring green, then fingering the shaggy trunks of the fragrant cedars and bright madronas until it reached the derelict foundation on which 52-year-old Rae Newborn would build her house. That brush-deep, moss-soft, four-square, twin-towered stone skeleton that had held out against storm and fire and the thin ravages of time, waiting 70 years for this woman to raise its walls again. Or not. This could easily prove a farce, a tragic folly demanding the effort and expense of a moonshot without a board ever going up. That garish blue tarpaulin covering her pricey lumber might prove her memorial, and Folly would have another chapter added to its already colorful history. Rae found that her right hand had wrapped itself around the opposite wrist, its thumb tracing the criss-crossed scars on the tender and vulnerable skin. She tipped her palms back and let the sleeves fall away, and studied closely the raised lines, as if a message might be read there. One pair of scars had lived on her wrists for 30 years, but she could still recall the rich well of blood, the overwhelming relief, and the astonishing absence of pain. The slightly longer pair that overlaid them were 10 years younger, not much pinker, and less clear in her mind. But on top of that set, the most recent cuts were still bright and sharp. Almost exactly a year old, those. The scars held a macabre fascination, even during those blessedly long periods in her life when Rae had no desire to add to them. The intriguing dichotomy of the toughness of human skin and its defenseless parting, the body's grim determination to heal itself, the physical proof of how painful life could become, all drew her gaze. Most of all, though, she was constantly astonished, and even more grateful, that in all that self-mutilation she'd never managed to slice through anything essential to the working of the hand. Perhaps there was a message to be read on the skin. Next time use the gun, stupid. At that reminder, Rae dropped her hands and raised her eyes to the campsite, searching for the green knapsack that held, among her other most secret and treasured possessions, the wood-grip revolver that had been the reason for her recent long drive up the coast. As Tamara had pointed out more than once, a plane flight would have been easier on everyone else. But they don't allow guns on a plane. She spotted the lump of green nylon on top of the heap of possessions that had come with her on the Orca Queen out of Friday Harbor, piled there by Petra and Tamara and Ed de la Torre, left for Rae to sort and arrange. In those haphazardly stacked boxes were tools and toilet paper, canned goods and dry socks, everything a maroon sailor or woodworker could ask for. At least the tarp that protected them from the drizzle, strung between tent and trees as an impromptu outdoor room, was a drab and inoffensive brown. Rae's gaze continued on, traveling from the shiny new camp equipment arranged at one side of the clearing to the 2 stone towers struggling out of the vegetation 200 yards away. The towers were the only visible parts of what had once been a house, and they seemed to tug at her mind and at her hands, willing her to draw near. A house is an exercise in controlled tension, she mused. Who had said that? Whoever it was, they'd slightly missed the point. A house, she reflected, is more an exercise in using tension to control compression. It's not tension that needs controlling lest it pull a house to pieces, but gravity that threatens to push a building apart, its compression buckling walls and cracking foundations. Without the tension of a structure's key elements, collar ties to keep the roof rafters from splaying, floor joists to transfer the compression of sofas and grand pianos and running children and love-making couples into the tension along its lower edge, the house curls up in a heap and dies. The hunter must have come up with that idea of a house as a symbol of controlled tension, Rae decided. The succinct but inaccurate phrase had all the earmarks of one of the woman's psychiatric aphorisms, applying the gravity of a thoughtful